Good to see y'all. I've got a few Shohin trees here ready to work on. Looking forward to it. And really excited for a little bit of pine work as well. But first of all, I've got nice Shohin Trident maple, Korean ligustrum. It's Ligustrum obtusifolium. And then just a classic little Chinese elm that I've been messing with from a workshop that I'd done. And then it was kind of like my example tree, and so I've kept with it. So I'm going to keep going with it and see how that all goes. Right now it's pretty much springtime, so post-flush hardened pruning. Talked about that a couple videos ago with how the springtime trees put out the flush. We went through all the deciduous kind of primer material. Now that the flush of growth is hardened off, it's now energy positive, giving energy back to the tree. We can come along and work out how we want to reshape the tree. So we're going to be looking at that. I'll move my chair down just a tad to make sure I'm not hunched over here. There we go. And we'll just mess with, give you a little bit of room in that camera. I'm going to be right up in there. It's a great little Trident maple with some nice movement in it. I'll try to keep it centered there as well if we can. A really fun semi-cascade. We're just going to shore these up. And this is kind of that time when you cut back to two leaves, that is, or two buds. But the Trident maple, much like the Japanese maple that we looked at, and I'll show you here because I'm going to cut back on this one anyway, right to here. You have the main branch, then you have two leaves coming this way, and then it rotates, and they come off this way from the stem, then it rotates back around. So with that in mind, we don't want to cut all the way back to this first one because it's oriented vertically, and so we get branches coming this way. We're going to come out to the next one where they're horizontal, so that when it buds out and leaves out again, it's going to be a pad already created there, rather than something that is that we're going to have to wire or rework later. The fewer times that we have to put our hands on the trees, the better. If we can use their own growth to develop aesthetically, it's going to be better for the tree, it's going to be better for its development, it's going to be better for us being able to work with more trees. So that's what we're going around to do, is just kind of get the shape back on this one here. Hello to everybody. So with that semi-cascade form, we want a little bit more elongation here and some thickness in these branches. So I'll probably leave this one for now to see if we can develop a pad there, but we'll see about how it develops along the way. We definitely want to clear this out on the trunk line. We already have some good branching here. Really long internodes. I'll take that off there. Trident maples do root very easily. So if you want to take these, pull it down to where there's only 2 or 3 leaves on it, get some rooting hormone, and then you want to cut right underneath where the leaves are, because you've got the most buildup. It's got buds on there as well. Got the most buildup of hormones preparatory for making those buds into branches. So if you cut right under that, dip it in some, I use Hormone number 3, a powder, but there's gels, there are all sorts of things. Just dip it in there, stick it in, I use perlite, but you can stick it in various soil mediums, and that's good to go. They'll stay in water too. I usually have a bucket of water next to me, and I'll just stick it right in the water, and then after I do 3 or 4 trees, I'll go through and I'll grab all those cuttings and root those. But Trident maples are great ones. You're going to get a really high success rate on rooting for those. I'm also going to get rid of these unusually large leaves comparatively. If there's a branch that I want to keep, but I'll prune back that foliar that foliar mass so I can keep it more evenly distributed, so I'm not having one branch taking all the energy from the tree. This branch here is crossing over another one that's a much better branch. There's really not a place that's going to be advantageous for us, so I may just have to take off the whole thing there. We'll see what it looks like. I'm going to take it back to 2 buds and see how it develops. I'm not in a rush because I can move this one away in the future. Again, extra long. We like it there, but it's going to develop enough growth. So we're going to actually take that back to the 2 buds and start developing that as we get some thickening. Cutting back the tips, the growing tips, reduces the amount of hormones that are really pulling the energy to that location. But with that in mind, we're going to be thinning this out enough that it's going to be evenly dispersed with these bigger leaves down here and all the energy that was in there. I don't think we'll have a problem redeveloping that branch. I do think, let me see this. This branch is sticking straight down, and I am torn on whether or not I really want it to dip down below the lip of the pot. It's this one here. I'm just not sure what I want in the end for that to look like, so maybe we'll leave it now and see as it develops what that's going to be. For now, we're going to go through, thin out the apex. I tend to, when I'm styling, work from the bottom up, because often we'll pull branches down, but when I'm pruning, I'll start from the top down and work my way through the tree that way. Doing a little partial defoliation where I don't want to actually prune the leaf off. I'm going to cut them down by 2/3 so the tree will replace that photosynthetic mass with more buds developing and pushing into leaves. We're not going to do that here because we want these to stay large to encourage growth down here. Because we want this bottom branch to thicken up quite a bit. Even though we're eventually going to cut it back, we want some thickness on that. But anywhere we're going to keep it, such at the top, because we're trying to combat that apical dominance, it's going to naturally going to send more energy to the top of the tree. So we really want to be pruning back that foliar mass, but we don't have enough growth as far as twigginess goes to prune those back somewhere. We want to keep those buds developing, so we're going to take the mass off the leaf and leave the branch intact. And that's going to trigger the tree to say, I need to keep making the same amount of energy, but I don't have as much foliar mass, so I'm going to push out twice as many leaves if they're the size. And that's just the large ones, and that's just the strong areas. If there's weak growth, I'm not going to touch those areas. But if there's really strong growth with just a few large leaves, want to pull those back, maintain that energy development, and more importantly, we're not cutting off those tips where it's going to be removing the auxin and cytokinins from the branches, those growth hormones. So that'll continue to draw the energy from the roots through the tree, through the branches, and develop the branching there and the health and vigor of the tree as well. If you have any questions or anything, feel free to shout out in the chat or whatnot. But really just kind of cruising along. Most of my stuff. I've got, this one's really condensed, so it's a little tougher to see. But once we get to that elm and the privet or ligustrum, you'll be able to see a few things a little bit clearer. But this is a really good example of post-flush hardened pruning and partial defoliation. Now we'll show you from the top too. So you can see those bigger leaves being thinned down now match the energy distribution here. This is much more condensed, but it's all smaller leaves. So you have a little bit more even foliar mass across this whole tree. And as we develop more twigginess on this tree, meaning the branch development, it will show much better with leaves on it. The difference is now, if we can get it here, you've got the more developed areas of the tree here towards the apex. You can see how small those branches are, right? Fit within my thumbnail, right there. The larger ones, we're wanting that energy to develop and pull those out, give them strength. But if I flip it over here, you can see there's only a few leaves back here and then at the tip. So we need buds to develop right along here, which is partially why I haven't yet fertilized this tree this year. I'm letting the tree use as much of its strength right now to develop more back budding, letting those branches grow out. And then as it gets later on, I will produce or I will support that growth with more fertilizer and more feeding so that they can pump that energy into bud development along the back, along the more developed branches, back on the branches rather than all the growth happening at the tips. You're seeing these really long needles, or sorry, not needles. I've been working on pines all day. These long petioles from the branch to the leaf. You're also seeing long internode length. All right, I'll pull one of these out. You're getting internode length, pushing an inch, whereas these smaller ones in here are tiny, like 1/16 of an inch size. So that's the difference between a well ramified tree and a tree that looks pretty nice at the outset, but has quite a ways to go. All right, for now, that's it. It's pretty even, especially as you can tell from here. We're gonna let that tree sit, get some sunlight into the interior branches, because these buds that have developed along the interior branch will now be activated by light. Also, the necessity for increased photosynthetic activity with this partial defoliation. So that will be a great boon to this tree in helping it on its stage to refinement and look a whole lot different a year from now. So excited to see this one grow. All right. Ligustrum's next. Korean privet, Ligustrum obtusifolium. This is pushing 27, 28 years old. It has been in a pot forever, as in its whole life, grown from a very small whip cutting an only clip and grow method. I've had it for about 10 of those years. So, and continue to do only clip and grow. So it's an interesting pot. I like it. Um, Definitely not its final pot and not its final styling either. You can see how elongated the neck is right here, this apex. It goes straight up. But I haven't quite developed or found where I want the new apex to be. So I've just continued to work with it, prune it back. It always shoots out huge leaves in the spring, no matter how ramified it's been. And so, by the end of the year, they'll all be, half of a pinky size with that new flush of growth, and as I partially defoliate. So essentially, let it grow out, do its thing. Then I'm going to cut it back, and this is where you get that classic cut back to 2. So I'm going to come back in here. And my general rule of thumb is, as long as the inner nodes are close, I'm going to leave it. Let me see if I can get y'all in a little bit closer here. You can see the tip of my scissors here. Inner nodes are very close together. And then all of a sudden you get a little bit farther and then really far. So I'm going to come in right here. I missed it. There we go. Take that off. Adventitiously, it is also flatter. It's not sticking straight up. So I'm looking to do that directional pruning as well, like we talk about in the deciduous video also. I did it with the Korean hornbeam 2 weeks ago. So check that out for sure. But I'm going to go back in here and just do that, prune it back to 2 branches. Well, 2 leaves, which will develop into 2 branches. And move along. These also grow from cuttings rather well, so another great opportunity to keep on moving. Testing things out. I never really did a lot with cuttings. And then once I started, I thought, at least I'll have some trees to just let grow and sit on. And then I started planting them after 2-3 years in tiny little mame pots. And those were really enticing to people at some of the shows. So I've moved a handful of those vending, which is always good. But then also I've been able to practice and experiment with some of the different techniques and things. That would look good down, but see, so what I'm looking for now is not just automatically pruning back to 2 on new shoots, but I'm also looking at where can I go back to if I want to make a deeper cut into some of these branches and develop this tree. Again, just partial defoliation, taking those off. Some people do a full defoliation, which is fine, I suppose. You always run the risk that your tree is not going to bounce back. So pay attention to your tree. Even if you normally partially defoliate, just pay attention to your tree. Maybe this year is not the year for it. Maybe it'll be just fine. But your ligustrum's going to be such an intense grower that you're probably going to be all right if you want to fully defoliate. But I figure it's no problem. The only thing I do fully defoliate are tropicals in the summertime. Pull those back. I've never had an issue with those. So. This is in keeping with, as far as what I'm doing here, the directional pruning that I'm doing is in keeping with the clip and grow method, as far as just let the tree grow and then prune it back to shape, rather than, it's never had wire on it, and you can see it's just covered in pock marks from branch reduction. It really adds an interesting dynamic to the style of the tree. And they'll heal up okay, but it's much more, it adds to the nuance of the tree rather than just being another tree. It's to say something's been clip and grown its entire life is really exciting for me, just from a bonsai perspective. I definitely need to shorten this apex though. That's the whole issue is if I want and develop these lower branches. Because if I want to keep it without wire fully, there's no way that this current apex should look the way it does. It just sticks up way too high. I would like the apex to be right, well, I'll show you by bending it right there. More or less. But how do we do that without wire? Do I do a guy wire for the sake of saving a developed apex? Or do I cut it back and hold this? Being told to stop cutting, but we'll see. No, I mean, this is just cutting the foliage. It's no problem. It's going to bounce back and produce twice as many buds and give better twigginess. I'm not removing any branches really, so it's no problem. If it makes you nervous, sorry, turn away for the next few minutes and then hop back on. But once you get used to it and you know the process, you'll be all right. The first cut, as they say, is always the deepest, and then you get a taste for it, and then sometimes there's no turning back because you take off just a little too much and you realize, whoops, maybe you were right, shouldn't have cut that one. So what I'll probably do is sit on this apex and figure out what I want to do as far as the feel of the tree. Is it worth doing a full clip and grow? And so what it would happen is we'd have this 1, 2 little tiny branches here, just under that, here and here, and there's one just opposite. We'd take this off and we'd develop those from scratch, a new apex. Or great that it was clip and grow, one guy wire is not going to ruin that, to pull this down and fill in this gap and pull that apex down where it's supposed to be. I'll sit on that for a little bit and decide what I want to do. I mean, it really is just an artistic decision to make, which sometimes for silly reasons can be the toughest ones, because it's the right thing to do aesthetically, but is there another way to do it, and is it worth saying that it was purely clip and grown for its entire life for one guy wire versus a whole new apex? But there's only a few more leaves on here, so I'll finish that up. Consider what to do. And we'll hit that elm pretty hard as well. So we'll see what happens. But all's well. Got one more right here. There we go. So now with the partial defoliation, you can see a little bit more what the tree usually looks like coming in the fall, because once those new leaves come in, I'll come through and take all those old ones off. But with the smaller leaves, you can really see how that tree shines in its state. So 2 down, 1 to go as far as this goes, and then I'll probably just hang out and do some pine work. As far as I've got Japanese white pine, so single flush, 5-needle pines. Do a little bit of that. And maybe chat through some of those things. Classic run-of-the-mill Chinese elm. You can probably find them at like IKEA and anywhere else. They'll be like the ficus, then the ginseng ficus, and then these things, those grafted ginseng ficus. I do a lot of my workshop materials from Brussels Bonsai. I think sometimes they get a bad rap, just because they put out so much material. But I do like some of the material that they produce. Good people up there, everything. So I like to use these kind of starter trees for workshop material. But there's some diamonds in the rough up there, especially if you're able to go up and get your hands on them and pick out exactly what you need. So I always have one that I kind of pick out. I usually, with my workshops, I'll have them set out and give a little introduction of what you're looking for in a tree, how to find a front, things like that. And then I say, okay, everybody come up and look for a tree. Or I'll have like 6 on a table of 4, so they have something to pick out of. And I always take something that's left over, so I'm not like picking the best and saying, oh, look what you can do. And it's like, well, yeah, your material's twice as good as all the other material here. Of course it looks nice. So I'll take one of the leftovers and I'll work on it as kind of a quick demonstration at the beginning, and then I'll go around and move through the tables and work with people on their individual trees. So the obvious things we're going to take off, these little random stragglers here way down below. I don't like the growth on the interior of the curve. There was a branch that I previously pruned off here, so that's why all this growth is coming out. When you prune off a large branch, often because the tree's trying to heal, it's putting a lot of nutrients and a lot of hormones in that area, and so you'll often get a lot of sprouts coming from there. We're gonna take this one off too. The look on this one, it is a slender trunk. There's not much taper, so I'm trying to elongate that design. So what I'm looking for is, I've got one branch here. You'll see in just a minute. It's actually easier to see this one from this side. I've got one branch low, another one here, and then quick succession we transition up into the apex. So what I'm looking to do, there's a piece of stuff that's bugging me right here, filling up that gap. So, much better, is just define those pads and let these long shoots stay long to get some thickness on the branches. So I'm looking to clear up any kind of mess and anything. I don't want anything else on this trunk than what I already have. So I'm just going to move through and clean out anything that's growing from the nexus between the trunk and the primary branch. Anything growing back into the tree, either this direction or front to back, right? Left to right, front to back, whatever. And then I'll be a little bit prudent because there's potential for wiring, but generally anything growing vertically, either up or down, you want to remove as well. And then often you'll want to shorten these, but we're playing the long game here. We don't want to shorten these huge shoots. We want them to grow, because if they're growing, they're thickening. So we want these branches to thicken until they get the point they want, and then we'll directionally prune. So that being said, you can tell that these are a bit more scraggly, whereas the canopy and the apex at the top, the canopy at the top or the apex is much more dense. So we don't mind thinning those out, because if we get too heavy of a girth up here, it's going to throw off the scale. We don't want really thick branches up top. We want thick branches down low, thinner branches up top. So we'll control the growth and prune back these long shoots up top. We'll let the long shoots run. So that's kind of where my head is moving into this tree after its initial styling, to kind of clean it up and propel it forward in its design. Maybe we'll start up here, because we know we're taking these off. I'm going to go back again to, so I'm going to go back to directionally pruning, that is with the alternating, sorry, it's harder to see. I'm going to put the branch backwards and the leaves aren't in the way. With the alternating leaf structure, left, right, left, right, left, right. If I prune here, sorry, missed it again. The bud is going to swell and form a new branch growing this direction. If I cut it here, the multiple buds will swell, but then the branch structure will go this way. So rather than having to wire it all the time, I can prune somewhere. If it's already facing the direction I want it to go, we'll just prune to the direction I want. So when I'm pruning these longer shoots, such as up here at the top, I'm going to, first consideration is which direction do I want this branch to grow. So I'm not just coming back and pruning back to 2. I'm saying, where is the direction I want this branch to grow? If I'm pruning back to 3, pruning back to 4 maybe, to keep a little bit of that length, that's fine with me. So I'll prune back to 3 if the direction of the third is better than the direction of the second. So automatic think, okay, back to 2. That just means get back to a tighter inner node, a tighter branch structure. But you don't have to necessarily just limit yourself to, well, that's the second branch leaf, so I have to take it there. You can take it back at the third one, the fourth one, whichever. These are sticking straight up. I'm going to take those off as well, because there's a horizontal branch here. No problem. You could potentially prune back to 1. It's not necessarily a problem. The only consideration is you limit yourself in your bifurcation down the road, but you can always develop bifurcation as long as you're not sacrificing the structural integrity of that branching. You're good to go. So sometimes you prune back to 1 to get the direction you want, and then you can pull it off. I'll have to check on that one, I'm not sure. It's growing straight down. Also, if you have branches, if you have like 3 or 4 coming out of the same spot, you're going to want to take that down to 2, if not down to 1. This one here is coming from all the way on this side of the tree and growing all the way across. So let's get in there and figure out what we need to do. Okay. The inner node length up here is tiny. That's one really fun thing about these Chinese elms. My favorite elm to work with, I love the Hokkaido and the Seiju elm. I really, really like the Jacqueline Hillier elm. They're a little bit larger of a leaf, but their branching structure is fantastic, and they're really, really fast growers. And they get in naturally interesting trunk movement. Not sure why, not sure how, but they do, and it's great. This one I went back to 3 on, but it's growing back this direction instead of straight towards the viewer, so that'll be great. Assuming this is the front of the tree. This feels a little bit more like the front, but the apex I like better on the other side. So the reason this feels better as a front, or this calls to me immediately for the back, is this initial branch is growing back away from the camera rather than towards the camera. So the branching looks better from this side, but the apex looks better from the other side. We'll figure that out as it develops. Things growing straight down. We need to remember that we're clearing out and defining these pads from one another. So some of this interior branching needs to be cleared up, anything that's growing straight down. And you'll start to see how it shapes up. Another knob in here, kind of bugging me. That's a bit big. I'm gonna put some cut paste on that before too long. Make sure it stays healthy. Put some on both of those. Covered all the way. See what we've got going on here. There we go. I don't think I need this one for growth development. There's plenty of others there. So not being useful in that regard, we're going to take that one off as well and accentuate these for that purpose. Straight down. There's a little nub. Now comes the big decision is where exactly is the front, and how do we address the apex now rather than later when we're gonna have to make a big cut. So we'll see what we can do there. So we definitely want, I really like that low branch. The branching definitely looks better from this side, for sure. The apex from here, the movement's the same, essentially. You've got the kind of the classic S curve. Which again, for a piece of starter material is no problem. It's a good expectation of when people say, bonsai tree. Hey, that's what you see, that's what you expect, that's what you get. Expectations are met, no problem. Is it the most desirable style of movement? To me, aesthetically, no. Are there people that love it? Yes. Great. As long as you love the tree you got, good. Okay, so like I mentioned, these are going to stay long. Here, and there's one here. To add some branching to other portions, add some girth to the other branches so that we don't have the same diameter of branch here, here, and here all the way up the tree. Anything that was that size I pruned off already of the apex, so really condensed that size there. To add to the scale, we don't want too much more foliage. The difficulty here for me is there's not a lot of taper. We get a transition of taper about here. The next one isn't till about, there's a slight one maybe here, but the next one really isn't until up here, right as we transition into the apex, we start covering that up. So if I take this off, it condenses the canopy, which gives me a mixed message for an elongated, more elegant feminine tree. If I lengthen this out, the trunk line looks better. If I condense it, I need to somehow transition taper faster where I don't have any points of transition of taper. So that's the problem for me. Maybe if we just stand it up, or we let these portions grow a bit and see where it takes us. We bring that apex forward a bit. But that'll be something that maybe we don't have to solve right now. Or this is it. We go from here and we just stand this up. That gives us another change of movement as well. But standing this up will give us that height. It'll create another layer of dents in the apex, which will help with that feminine design. We have something to fill in that backdrop here. And then we can take this off. So let's do that. There's one. There's two. And then grab some wire. Oh, I left my wire. Got one piece right here. It's way too thick. I left my wire out in the truck. Got a client's yesterday. Let's see what we got. This will probably work. It's a little bit thick, but I think it's all right. Yeah, it'll work. Okay, it's aluminum. It'll be fine. Yeah, really shortened that. But we'll see what we got here. Okay. Secure that wire, get it up and around this branch. Again, it's a little, the wire's a little thick for this branch, but work with what you got. I really only need to move this up a tiny bit. I'm going to try and do it without my hands being right in the way. But okay, so what we want is some separation between these two. So we're going to work on that until we get it right where we want. And then bring the top of that down. And then we can prune it back as needed to clear out those distinct pads. I'll give you a quick close-up after this in just a second. Okay, so what's going to happen is we're going to take this off as well. Get some foliar separation, pad separation from the back. For those big leaves. You can go through and partially defoliate these as well. But you can see how it was much more condensed when we readjusted the apex to be. The front worked out better from this side, given what we had, the material was, with all the branch structure and the trunk line, but not the apex. So having to do a 180-degree turn for the apex, we took off the previous apex. In this branch, we just stood up a little bit rather than this and this forming one singular pad here. We separated that, gave it some vertical separation, and that was all it needed because it already had the horizontal separation. So we added that other degree of separation there to create 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and that pad there, the 7th pad, to separate it here to create that just a little bit, and it gives us another point of transition of taper. So this is definitely not the best tree you've ever seen, but it's well on its way to being something that's worthwhile as far as honing skills, developing what you need to work on some humble material, but nonetheless quality material. So I love Chinese elms as starters. Most of the time people ask what's a go-to tree. I know that junipers are always kind of the look that you get. When people think bonsai, they think juniper. But I always recommend either a Chinese elm or some form of boxwood. Really love the boxwoods. So as it's waxing a little bit late, I will say that I'll probably forego the pines. The pines will be working on well into next week as well. So I'll probably come in next week and do some white pine work and see how that goes. But for now, we'll pull up the 3 trees. There's the elm in development, Korean ligustrum, and the ramification of working on ramification and pad development on the Shohin Trident maple. So here's kind of the three of the day in all their somewhat spastic glory, but sorry about that. But that's what they are. It was a blast. Thanks for joining. We'll see y'all next week, and bonsai on y'all.